That function of the tight end class being relatively weak.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I think in a normal class, he probably wouldn't be that high, but he's a one-of-a-kind player.
I'll pass her on over. Oh, we are live. Oh, okay. Are we back? Okay. Welcome back. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. This is, of course, the Hot Read Podcast, Part 2. Hopefully, those of you that are with us live in the comments could help us out by confirming that the bad echo from the first stream is gone and we sound normal, in which case we'd love to talk. Thank you, James. Would like to truck along with today's episode. I'm joined by two gentlemen once again, producer JT as always, and James Foster, No Flags Film. I'm really trying to bide my time until somebody confirms that there is no bad echo. If anybody could go over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, find this live stream, and in the comment section, tell us whether or not there's a bad echo. That would be incredibly helpful. Perfect. Thank you, Shane, first responder helping us out. Okay. So now I can tell you for sure that we're joined by James Foster of No Flags Film, of AtoZ Filmroom, draft expert. We're live here in Mobile, Alabama. And now that we've got the tech situation figured out, James, how are you? How have you been enjoying your Senior Bowl experience?
Once again, I've been enjoying about every part of it except for
the last 15 minutes or so. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's nice to spend some quality time sitting on this couch.
That's a great company, man. I appreciate that. We're talking about some of the best prospects in this year's draft class. And we were talking on the show yesterday about how this is kind of the time of year that I think most NFL fans start to acquaint themselves with these guys. You, of course, have been diving into these prospects for, when do you start your process? Like September? Are we already watching tape? Are we already putting together boards?
Earlier and earlier every year, there's always like a panic kind of whenever I start watching draft prospects, where like I've been hearing a bunch of people mentioning different prospects, and there's so many guys that I want to watch.
Right.
And it's like there's such limited time. This is as prepared as I've been heading into draft season.
This is your third, fourth draft you covered now?
This is my third draft doing like a whole board, watching, like 200 to 300 prospects and stuff.
Right.
I did a couple years before that where I would watch kind of like the first round guys and then whoever the Titans picked. But yeah, third year managing a whole board and writing scouting reports and all that.
Fantastic. Well, before we dive into some of the top prospects here at the Senior Bowl in Mobile with us, and we're going to get James's expert opinion on some of those guys, I got to tell you a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you're joining us live, we appreciate you tuning back in to our second stream here. Do me a quick favor, if you're watching on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram, on any of the social accounts, head over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, find this live stream there, and in the comment section, that is where we'd love for you to be a part of today's conversation, like Kenneth and Joey and Shane already are. Appreciate you fellas being with us. And while you're there, hit subscribe. It is free to you, and it's very helpful to us if you subscribe to the channel, so we appreciate you doing that. Zach feels bad for JT. JT, I know before we dove into the actual prospects, you did tell me you had something that you needed to address at the beginning.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? This is how this is going to go today. There is a producer tag in my name, Producer JT. So that's what we're going to do today. I appreciate your sympathy, and we'll most likely see it after the show today, saying JT Erasure folks are very happy today.
Taking the mic from James, then it would have been bad.
Yeah, that probably would have been bad, but I agree with James on the sun. We are 3 rosy tomatoes here today, and it was really, we were talking to some guys earlier today, and it was like, we tried our best, right? Like, we got sunscreen, and like, it just does not matter. Like, you can put on as much sunscreen. It's like, this is for the love of the game, and it's just kind of like what happens after that. I do want to say that this, like James said, this is a great time in draft season, because you start to get acquainted with guys, and you really understand who these guys are and who people are really. And sometimes when you find out who these people are, you find out some of their intricacies and some things they do. And sometimes you find out things about certain people and how they eat their tacos. And I think that's what we need to start the show off here with. I think most people in the Titans community last night were pretty shocked to find out most people in the community were shocked to find out that you love to eat tacos the absolute worst way. And I just want to give you the floor to finally say your piece on this, because I know in the past 24 hours, you really haven't been given a platform for your ability to eat tacos. So I just want to, to defend yourself. So
here's the issue. JT and James and our buddies Zach and Stoney at dinner last night. I had tacos, and I eat tacos underhanded. I didn't understand that this was an uncommon thing. Apparently, most folks, which I feel like is strong, and we need a much larger sample size to actually know, but apparently most people hold, yes, we do. Don't. Some people hold their tacos underhand like I do, but most people hold their tacos over the top like this, and then you eat it, which feels weird to me to even.
You're supposed to hold it by the lips.
No, you hold it under, you cradle the taco, and you deliver it to your mouth.
Hold it by the lips to keep the contents in the tortilla.
you wrap around with your hands to keep the contents, and is the way that I approach taco eating. Needless to say, they made fun of me. There was a very, very unflattering photograph put on the internet that far too many people saw, that was really casting me in the worst possible light. I feel like it was slanderous and unnecessary, but nonetheless, that's okay. All right. Okay. Some comments going on that we're not going to read on the show. Anyways, that's the situation on tacos. And if anybody is out, my final word on this is anybody out there is with me on underhanding tacos, which our buddy Nick Suss from the Tennessean today was saying is fine, by the way. So there are twos of us, at least. I think that there are more. There may be dozens of us out there. Please let me know. Write me a letter. Send me a carrier pigeon, however you can communicate, and let me know that you are with me so that I can prove that it's not that weird. Okay. Got that out of the way. That was clearly the most important thing that we're talking about today. Some prospects that we've noticed here at the Senior Bowl that we wanted to talk to you, James, about. Let's start with some of the receivers, because that's a position that the Titans are in desperate need of. And it is a position that there's some pretty significant talent here. Not any of the really top flight guys in this class, but a number of names from that second and third and fourth tier. And a guy that we spoke about yesterday a good bit, having had a pretty disappointing first outing at practice, made a pretty nice acquittal of himself today, I felt, in Xavier Legette, from South Carolina, a wide receiver who has been comped by some to A.J. Brown in the way that he moves. We love, apparently, to throw A.J. Brown comps at every receiver that's even remotely reminiscent of him in the Titans community, it seems. But he is a guy that is big, is physical, is fast. What did you think about his practice today? And just in general as a prospect, what do you think about Legette as a receiver?
Yeah, I thought he had a really good bounce back performance today. I think what he showed in this practice is probably his best trait to me, which is the violence that he with which he explodes out of his breaks. I think at his size, with his straight line speed, contested catch ability, what kind of ties him together as a prospect is going to be his ability to create separation. And I was pleasantly surprised by that on his tape. I thought yesterday, everyone seems to have an agenda on Xavier Legette, which I feel
why
like,
is that?
I feel like
why?
I'm kind of a Legette centrist, okay.
Okay.
I think that there are some limitations just in terms of fluidity and smooth movement skills, but he's not one of these, someone that I would I think he's better than Keon Coleman, for example, a better prospect. Okay. Yeah. I think he can create separation. My biggest issue with him is probably releases off the line of scrimmage. That's just from his tape. But yeah, I mean, he was definitely hurt yesterday in practice 1 by a lot of inaccurate throws. And I think that for the people that kind of just tally how many catches someone had in a Senior Bowl practice, he was disappointing from that standpoint. And then he had some drops, wasn't able to come down with some difficult catches yesterday. But he made a really nice acrobatic catch on a deep out corner type of route today. And I think I haven't watched the team practice tape yet. I just watched all of the one-on-ones. I think he had 3 one-on-ones and won all 3 of them pretty decisively in today's practice.
It's to your point there. It's so weird that he had a worse day with better QB play and then a better day today with worse QB play. It was super interesting to see that. Like yesterday, I mean, in that group, it's really tough anyways, but like today, the QB play was pretty just across the board, wasn't the best, and he was able to make the most of it. So I'm with you on that one. I think the biggest thing, like you were saying, it seems like it's so interesting that you say everybody has an agenda on Xavier Legette, and that's so true because I feel like it truly is that guy who is going to be there in the second round. And with so many people comping him to like an AJ Brown, it feels almost like you have to have an agenda on him. But I echo everything you said to him about him today. The biggest thing with him is just that explosiveness off the line. But like when he gets his separation, he is one of the best players out there, especially with contested catches and whatnot. I think this past season, I think he was around 50% on contested catches, which and he was getting a lot of them when you have Spencer Rattler throwing you the ball. So I think there's a lot to like about his game, but I do question how much of the upside and how much truly he can look like that wide receiver 1 and that game defining player.
Tez Walker is the next guy who had a pretty nice bounce back day. I felt like
you thought he had a bounce back day.
I didn't think he had a very good first practice. Do you think he also had a bad second practice as well? I mean, I felt okay. So
I thought he was one of the worst players out
well,
there.
here's the difference for me, and you probably paid better attention to him than I did, because I tried to watch as much of the D line or offensive line and D line as I could today. So I briefly spent time with the wide receivers. The difference was I actually saw him make up any play, whereas yesterday I literally didn't see him make a play at all. Maybe he didn't have a good day. Regardless, he's a guy that's pretty high on most draft boards. He's somebody that's regarded as a pretty nice prospect. So
not on mine.
Okay, so tell me about that. Why is he not somebody that you think is going to necessarily be a great prospect at the next level?
So Devontae Walker, wide receiver out of UNC, right. Elite straight line speed. He's got good length, long strider. I think he measured in around 6'1" with pretty good arm length. Outside of that, I have a difficult time really finding redeeming qualities with Tez Walker. I had Mike Renner on my channel a couple days ago, and he was talking about how for a deep threat who's going to win on the vertical plane, the number one most important trait for them to have outside of obviously straight line speed, being able to run past defensive backs, is being able to sit down, sink your hips, stop on curl routes. And he cannot do that. Like, I think I posted on Twitter a rep, him versus Cam Hart, where it looks like Cam Hart ran the route for him, but it's just because the route was so slow to develop. It's a struggle. It's a labored process for him to sit down on any kind of stop route or comeback. And what happens if you can't sink your hips and stop is that DBs are just going to play over the top of you, give you a ton of cushion.
Right.
Every cornerback in the NFL is going to be fast, faster than most of the corners he faced in the ACC. So like they can recover, they can turn their hips and recover if they're giving him some cushion. So, that's one issue. Didn't run a very diverse route tree at UNC, but I thought in breaking routes, just quickness and explosiveness out of his breaks was pretty average. Had a lot of focus drops, especially down the stretch at UNC. And that showed up in both Senior Bowl practices. I try to keep a drop tally when I'm watching the practices. I counted 4 from Tez Walker today, just watching it live. There could have been more, but you get the focus drops, inconsistent contested catch skills, and doesn't give you really anything after the catch. I believe he broke 2 tackles or forced 2 missed tackles last season. He had a shortened year because of the NCAA thing, but he played 7 games, I think, forced 2 missed tackles, ranked near the very bottom of college football in yak per reception. So when you kind of add it all up, it's to me, it's giving Tyquan Thornton.
And you never want to give Tyquan Thornton.
No.
All right, sounds like I caught like his 2 good plays of the entire day, which is going to happen when you're trying to watch all these guys at the same time, I guess. So he's a guy that others are higher on that you're not so high on. Let me ask you about a guy that
I see him in the late 20s on mock drafts.
It just blows your mind.
It blows my mind. It would surprise me if that continues after the Senior Bowl, because I feel like the evidence is kind of out there if you didn't watch him on tape. Right.
I don't. Is he a Drake May merchant? Like, is that part of the reason why he's so high on these boards, that people are just seeing a lot of him because they're watching Drake?
Well, I think he has a skill set that can win at the college level because the DBs aren't as fast. So just like running in the 4.3s, and having average to above average hands, that can get you some explosive plays in college.
So let me ask you about a guy that you're higher on, that I've heard a number of folks tell me this week they are not so high on. I was talking to our buddy Tron Davenport the other day or yesterday, and he was telling me he does not see it with this kid. You told me that you actually kind of like him as a prospect. Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, wide receiver out of USC. What is it about Brendan's game that you think could translate to the next level?
Yeah, I think to me, Brendan Rice has had a bit of a disappointing Senior Bowl. I thought showed flashes at USC of some nice route running, but looks pretty clunky to me, moving laterally, and kind of a DPI merchant, which if you're trying to draw flags,
he drew a ton of them yesterday.
In the one-on-ones, that's usually not a great sign for a receiver. And my biggest issue with his college tape was ball skills and physicality, fighting through contact. And I think that's also been an issue. I mean, he beat Cam Hart on like a kind of circus route in break, and then back corner of the end zone, and just dropped a wide open touchdown. So yeah, I think I'll have to check. I think I had an early 4th round grade. I haven't adjusted any grades yet from the Senior Bowl, and they're usually there. Are
you telling me that you've watched years worth of tape on these guys and 2 practices haven't changed your mind dramatically?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not going to make any drastic changes based on the Senior Bowl practice. Although this is, for most of them, the best competition that they've faced.
Sure.
And especially for players that are in like a really specific role in their college team's scheme, where maybe they aren't getting the one-on-one matchups and opportunities that you would want to see for evaluation, from an evaluation standpoint, it can have an effect. So yeah, I think I have an early 4th on Brendan Rice, and I would probably be leaning towards a 5th rounder for him.
Stoney points out, by the way, circling back to Tez Walker, that Tyquan Thornton was also a 2nd round pick. So, I mean, it could have, sometimes these guys just fool these GMs, and they get drafted way too high. We've got a ton of players to get through, so we're just going to keep trucking along. A couple more receivers that I want to bring up. Roman Wilson had a pretty good couple of days. I mean, I've heard positivity on him from both practices. Wide receiver out of Michigan, an interesting evaluation from the standpoint of not I wouldn't say not the best quarterback play, but didn't get a ton of action just because he's on a team that doesn't pass the ball a ton. What are your thoughts on Wilson as a prospect? I spoke to him a little bit after the practice today. Seems like a stand-up guy, but on the field, what do you see?
Yeah, I like Wilson. Honestly, I like both of the Michigan corners or receivers. Cornelius Johnson was at the Shrine Bowl. I thought he was probably the best receiver there. And Roman Wilson definitely was the best receiver in the first practice. Really smooth and controlled out of his breaks. Excellent ball skills, especially, doesn't have a big catch radius or anything like that. He's definitely one of these undersized guys that you have to make an exception for, but does a great job adjusting to some of JJ McCarthy's slightly inaccurate passes. JJ McCarthy is the king of a pass that is catchable but inaccurate. So many times where just hitting his receivers out of stride, but Roman Wilson didn't have many issues with that. So yeah, I like Roman Wilson.
Is McCarthy the kid that you wanted to throw, like play catch with as a kid? When you're like, throw it just, throw it just high enough so I can jump up and look awesome and moss somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you're trying to do like back corner
of the end zone. Exactly. He's the guy you need.
Yeah, except he can't throw with touch, so it's going to be.
It's just a laser. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, I like Roman Wilson. I saw someone say that he was going to run in the 4.3s, which would be surprising to me. But I think he's there. This receiver class, not only is it top heavy, not only is it strong at the top, it's strong throughout. However you want to say that, it's just strong across the board. I'm almost having to keep myself from getting prospect fatigue and being like, man, is there really another receiver with a 3rd round grade, or am I?
They can't all go in the 3rd round, right? Exactly.
I've just got to take the tape for what it is, and I mean, okay. I think Roman Wilson. I don't know about where he goes. I still think 4th round is probably his most likely destination, just because of how stacked this class is. But
from a Titans perspective, they better hope a lot of these guys are available in the 4th, because they don't have anybody they can pick in the 3rd. It's not an option.
Yeah. The Titans need to trade down. They need to trade down into the 3rd, but then not trade down anymore, because the class kind of dries up.
The depth just a cliff. Yeah, exactly. You mentioned strong a minute ago. Speaking of strong and speaking of big, a big fella that is not hard to miss out here, Johnny Wilson, wide receiver from FSU, has had I know you were watching him on the field today, had a couple of nice reps in team. What do you think about Johnny as a receiver? Why is he not already playing tight end out here at the Senior Bowl? Is it inevitable that he's going to be a tight end at the next level? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have him as a tight end on my board. I have him as tight end 2.
Tight end 2. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a function of the tight end class being relatively weak?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I think in a normal class, he probably wouldn't be that high, but he's a one-of-a-kind player. Have to see, can't remember exactly what he measured in at, but 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah, he came in, I believe, at 6'6" and 1/8, and I think it was around 227 was his weight. So I mean, in like that weight, I think we were all talking about it. He could put another 20 pounds on. Like if he were to fully convert to a tight end, he puts 20 pounds on. Like he, I think, has the 237 actually. So a whole 6'6", a whole 10 pounds more, 237. He was a guy that I think he has
35-inch arms.
Yeah,
which is the crazy part.
He has like, I saw a tweet today that said he is what we thought Darnell Washington could be last year, and I think I really like that he has the huge build, but like the fluidity in his route running ability. I
gotta disagree with that.
Really? You think so?
Yeah. Like, so to me, my comp for Johnny Wilson is Darren Waller to Mike Gesicki.
Okay.
And Darnell Washington projected as more of that 6th offensive lineman type of tight
end.
True.
What you think is a lot of fans were hoping Darnell could be that receiving talent. It's just this freaky.
Because what makes Johnny Wilson so exciting is the fluidity and the movement skills, route running ability. And for a receiver, I think he's too big to play receiver, because with that frame, and he has good quickness for his size, but relative to receivers and other corners, average quickness, it's so easy for corners to get their hands on him at the line of scrimmage, and like he's not going to be a slot receiver. So I worry about him beating press, and similar to Devontae Walker, struggles to sink his hips and decelerate, and doesn't have elite speed over the top. What he wins with is just being a smooth, crafty route runner, having an elite, like historic catch radius, can just pluck the ball out of the air. Doesn't matter how accurate it is, but then he has consistent drop issues. really every season of his career has struggled with drops. And
do you have him ranked as a prospect over Keon Coleman, his teammate?
No, I have Keon Coleman, just because once you add the element of uncertainty of moving someone to a position, you're probably going to say like they have to add weight. There's just a lot more unknown and a lot that we're projecting him to do that we haven't already seen on tape. He's probably the best, I would say the second best run blocking receiver in this class. I think we might be talking about the best one later. But that's matched up against corners. I don't know how he's going to hold up against a defensive end. So, he might be a receiving threat only type of tight end.
And that's what I wanted to ask you there. Do you think that because as we go along in the draft process, it becomes a more of a reality that he is going to be that tight end? Do you think his stock falls because that he is, like you said, he is maybe the second best run blocking wide receiver in this class, but a team is going to have to take him on as a project, I think. And do you think that really affects his draft stock as we move forward here?
Yeah, I think when you add the extra step of moving someone, moving someone to a new position, I think that does maybe drop them down a round. I have him with a 3rd round grade right now. And I even feel like I'm a little bit high on him because what causes me to change my grades most often is when I sit down and do a mock draft, and then I'm sitting there drafting for a team that needs this position. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take this tackle in the 3rd round. And then I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I would want to take them in the 3rd round. And then I'll end up lowering their grade. And I had that similar thought with Johnny Wilson. I thought he had a couple nice reps in practice today, though. Really interesting player. I'm excited to see what he looks like in the NFL. I just personally hope the Titans don't take that chance. I'd love to watch it from afar.
Right.
He's definitely his best rep today, which I just randomly went viral because I didn't understand why people were so crazy about it. The rep where he had maybe his best rep today was against a Georgia corner, and so that prompted the entire FSU fan base to say, "This what will happen if we let him play. This is what you would have done. You would have get burnt." But I think that it's an interesting. Last thing I'll say on Johnny Wilson is he is a interesting prospect as the NFL as a whole really starts to have these guys who play positionless ball. I think for a team that wants to bring in a player like that who maybe doesn't do what a tight end does, but gets still in that tight end type role and is able to produce, I think he is someone who really could stand out.
You want to move on? We do have other players to talk about, and we could sit here for 4 hours, but dinner is something that has to be gotten to here in Mobile. So let's keep trucking along, and I promise we'll talk about guys that aren't receivers, but we have one more we wanted to mention from today's proceedings, a guy that I think most folks probably haven't heard or thought of a whole lot yet. Marcus Rosemary-Jackson, wide receiver out of Georgia. He's a guy that I know you had us add to the list because you saw some things from him today that you liked. But James, what were your thoughts on him as a prospect when you watched his tape?
He was the last guy that I got to before the Senior Bowl. Landed in Mobile with about 10 players left to watch on the roster. But yeah, he was the last guy I watched, and I think he's the best run blocking receiver in this class. He just competes his ass off. Future Jawan Jennings in San Francisco, if you ask me. I think kind of limited what he's going to give you as a receiver. He's got, I believe he didn't have a drop last season. Someone can maybe fact check me on that. But kind of an average route runner, I think average speed, but he could be your classic, like wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 that gives you 500 yards and just blocks his ass off.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have any thoughts from him at practice today?
Yeah, he's a guy in that class of, I think, what we think of that American team that has maybe some more prominent guys like a Xavier Legette, like a Johnny Wilson, like Ladd McConkey. he's a guy who really wasn't one of those big name guys like that we've been noticing, and he's been easily one of the top 3 both days. I think he's shown a lot of good reps today and yesterday, and I think he's a guy that I think will continue to watch, not just because of his on-field, but an all-time name. Like, that is 3 different weird names, you know? Yes, as a last name. Not even Rosemary, Rosami. It's so weird.
As someone who makes a ton of tables with like players,
you hate this
stuff,
guy because it's such a long
hate
name.
The hyphenated last name.
Yeah,
that's why my ideal Titans mock like off season cut Azeez Al-Shaair,
right?
Don't bring back Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Don't bring back Sean Murphy-Bunting.
Yeah.
Yep.
I brought back Sean Murphy-Bunting. That was a mistake.
You got to go
just
change
get the
that.
shortest names as possible so I can optimize the 1920 by 1080 size that I have to work with.
Fair
That's
enough.
all I care about.
Speaking of guys that have been top performers out here, arguably the top performer on the defensive side of the ball, and we spent a lot of yesterday's episode talking about him, Quinyon Mitchell. If you paid attention at all to anybody's Mobile coverage, he has been talked about because he is as billed cornerback out of Toledo. Tell me everything about Quinyon that you've seen on tape.
Yeah, so Quinyon Mitchell was the guy that I was most excited to watch in Mobile today. Watching the practice live, I was just keying in on him every single snap.
Right.
And yeah, it sucks because the team periods, they just run the ball and check it down. So he didn't get much action, but he did get a pass breakup.
Because he clamps over there. They don't dare throw his way.
The issue with Quinyon Mitchell from a tape perspective heading into this weekend is that he only played 8% of his snaps in press coverage, almost exclusively off coverage at Toledo. He was elite at that, like one of the best college corners that I've ever seen at breaking on underneath routes. Really good timing, like reaching into the catching window. If you watch his first pass breakup from the MAC championship game against Miami of Ohio, go Redhawks.
And we've all seen the MAC championship this year, obviously, so people know what you're talking about.
You know, as everyone knows. But,
right.
You know, it's like 40 yards down the field. He's covering this deep post and then just like reaches his hand into the cookie jar, barely even makes contact with the receiver, knocks the ball out. He's got, according to Feldman's Freaks list, he's going to run somewhere in the 4.3s. So, you know, you apply the adjustment, we'll say 4.44.
Sure.
But you know, the issue is that there's no cornerback in the NFL, I'm guessing, but I'm pretty sure, that played anywhere close to that number of snaps in press coverage. Like, even if you're a team that plays a lot off the line of scrimmage, there are certain situations where you've got to get up and press. And just not knowing if he was comfortable doing that, and like the few reps that he did play and press, didn't really look that comfortable. His punch was, I thought, poorly timed, just kind of grabbed, turned his hips, hung on with the receiver.
Sure.
So yeah, I didn't really know what to expect with that phase of his game, but man, he's looked like a stud. He's been, I think, definitely the best defensive player here, and he had, in my opinion, the best individual rep of the entire 2 days of practice. He's covering Roman Wilson.
I was going to guess that's what it was.
Stop and go.
Yep.
Sinks his hips
like a Tesla. That guy can start and stop.
I mean,
crazy.
Dude, like, you could have just showed me that play, and I would have been like, "Oh, okay."
Scouting report. Do it on this guy based on this one rep, and you could
have
have just gone.
I think based on his Toledo tape, he was a top. He was actually
Why would a guy like him play at Toledo?
I don't know. I guess he's just a late bloomer.
Maybe.
But yeah, I had him at 33 on my board heading into Senior Bowl. He is, to me, firmly a first rounder. I think based on where he was going to go, like he was already going to go in the first round. I think you could see him go top 16, and I feel like top 20 is not a lock, but definitely a good bet for Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah, and I wanted to address some of the comments. Stoney obviously asking if he's a first rounder. You think he's so solid for first round, maybe a top half of the first round.
Yeah,
where's he on your cornerback board? Is he cornerback 2, 3 in this class? Do you have easy access to that real quick?
Yeah.
Some other comments here. Zach asking the real question: why does Easton's hat not have a logo? It does. It's just the white balance you can't see. it's whited out. It says Adidas on there. It's just a white logo on a white hat. So
So
it's
I've
not
got
just a weirdo white only hat.
I've got Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, Terry and Arnold 3.
Okay.
I'm thinking Quinyon Mitchell would be 4.
Okay.
When I update my board, right now I have Ennis Rakestraw and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I would definitely have Quinyon over Kool-Aid at this point. Rakestraw, they'll probably have like close to identical grades, but yeah, I mean, based on where, there's kind of like 2 or 3 mock drafts that you need to pay attention to as far as where guys are actually going to go. Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler. DJ had Terry and Arnold, I think, going 12th. Actually, they both had him going 12th in their most recent mocks. So, it would surprise me if he went over Terry and Arnold.
Right.
But yeah, especially, man, a team like Philadelphia with
their aging cornerbacks.
Who's the DC? Like the most obvious guy that I'm missing his name.
Fangio.
Yeah. Like just have him play off quarters and break on shit underneath. Like he's gonna get 10 interceptions as a rookie.
I saw another comment a while ago asking, besides Quinyon Mitchell, who is the second best cornerback you've seen out here? Does a name come to mind, or has he just been so standout that the rest of some names that I had written down? So Jarvis Brownlee, Andrew Phillips,
okay,
Max Melton, any of those guys?
Right, well, I had a list of like 12 winners, and my 3 corners were Quinyon Mitchell, Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky, Jarvis Brownlee out of Louisville.
Okay.
So, yeah,
we want to talk about those guys just a little bit.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with Brownlee. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out of Louisville, cornerback. What have you seen from him this week and on tape that you like?
Yeah, so he had 2 reps in the one-on-one drills where he just ran a dig route for a receiver. He undercut this. I think it was a speed out from Jaquan Jackson for Tulane, and then he had another rep on Jaquan Jackson in the 7-on-7 where he just pressed him into the ground. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a cornerback out of Louisville, undersized. Not exactly sure what his weight is. I know he's really short, but he looks kind of like well built for his size, and just super aggressive, feisty in press coverage. Comes up, fits the run. I watched him.
6'190".
Yeah, so that's what he's listed at. So I mean, like not terrible size. But I do know he came in. Let's see what he measured at
here.
Here at the Senior Bowl.
All right, I got it right here. So 5'10" and a half, 183.
Okay, so
but he's got 60th percentile arm length, which for a press corner is good. And like you see that on his tape, he lines up really close to the receiver. He's always underneath them with his leverage, and he just jams the shit out of them at the line of scrimmage. I think he's probably, I see him as like a press man slot corner. So maybe not the best fit for the Titans. I don't think you want him playing outside, but he's also one of those players where you watch him on tape and he just has that dog,
dog factor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just,
he was the guy today, I think, out of the corners that was the best corner. And it's a little surprising considering his consensus big board right now, a guy who's 238. I mean, he was, he's all the way down there at 238 on the consensus big board, but he was showing up in a major way today, especially in that second half one-on-ones, getting to watch him right there. Me and Tehran just looked at each other and said, this guy, it's glue right now. He was all over it. Like you said, with those arms, he was not letting anybody get separation away from him, and so he had a really good day. And
I'll be interested to see what he runs. I saw him get beat over the top a couple times when I watched him, and most of his like good reps today at least were more underneath type of stuff, so that'll be big for him. But yeah, I like Jarvis Brownlee. And then Andrew Phillips. Yeah,
I was going to ask. He was the other guy. He was the other guy that I think really stood out today, outside of Quinyon.
Yeah, no, Andrew Phillips had, I think, 2 consecutive really good days of practice. He's another undersized guy, 5'10", 191. But he is really fluid in man coverage. He's got some limitations as a run defender. Like he projects as probably a slot corner. That's where he played a lot of his snaps at Kentucky. But competitive, I think probably is going to have a difficult time shedding blocks at the NFL. I remember him missing a lot of tackles on tape. But just like in coverage, keeping up with receivers down the field, mirroring people at the line of scrimmage, I think you could make the case that he was the second best corner through these first 2 practices.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Should we move on to Melton? Yeah, Melton was another guy, I think, who had a so-and-so day. I think it's just important to mention him. He's a guy that was a wide receiver converted. He's one of those types that's converted to a cornerback. He was a guy that I think had an okay day yesterday, but definitely stood out to me today. I think he has in the inverse to those other 2 guys. He has the speed, but he lacks a little bit in coverage, which is why I think that he is a work in progress type of guy.
And that's brother to Bo Melton, who many NFL fans will be familiar with.
I didn't even make that connection. But
there you go. Same guy, same family, rather. We are going to talk about, I'm trying to make sure we got all our bases covered here. Okay, so we can talk about some big guys now, which we've not really talked about at all on this show since being down here. But they are here and they are talented. So let's dive into some of them. But first, let me tell you about our wonderful, amazing sponsor here at the Hot Read Podcast, BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse. Need to mention them before we get out of here. We love BoomBozz. We appreciate them being a part of the reason that we get to be here in Mobile. They got 3 locations in the Middle Tennessee area, in Spring Hill, in East Nashville, and in Murfreesboro. Fantastic pizza, fantastic drinks on tap, and fantastic viewing situations for all of your sports watching needs. Big screens all over the place. A phenomenal sports bar experience that you're going to enjoy. Check it out, whichever one's nearest you. Head on over, say JT and Easton and the Hot Read Podcast sent you, and we would appreciate it. You're not going to regret it. Okay, let's start with...
Tell them I sent you.
Tell them James Foster sent you, who they're not going to know who that is, just to get the look on their face. Okay, let's start with the defensive side of the ball. 3 defenders I want to talk about. One who it wasn't on my to-do list today, and then I was listening to our buddies Zach and Stoney on F Words talk about him, and I've heard a lot of folks in the draft community on Twitter talking about him having a really great day. They alluded to the fact that you're not so high on this guy, Devondre Sweat, defensive lineman out of Texas. Is that
People
incorrect?
Are saying I'm not high on him.
People were saying, here's what Zach was saying. He was saying that he was saying it on his show, on the record, that you had made a comment alluding to the fact that maybe some of his advanced stats were largely fluff. Is there any validity to that? What are your thoughts on Devondre Sweat, defensive lineman out of Texas?
Well, it's not that they're fluff. It's just you have to understand the context of them. So, he ranked 2nd in college football in pass rush win rate to Byron Murphy, his teammate.
Yep.
A lot of those reps, though, you'll see him quickly beat the blocker's hands and then creates an open A gap. And then he just doesn't have the explosiveness and closing speed to finish that rep and get to the quarterback. Okay. So the effect of that is that that's going to get charted as a win, like on PFF.
Sure.
He's going to get highly graded because they're grading you on how quickly you beat the block. And then you get like a 0.5, you can get a certain boost after that for how you finish it. Obviously, if you force a fumble, that's going to get the highest grade.
Right.
So like he grades out really well, but in terms and creating pressure is important. Like I'm the first person who will say that
pressure over sacks, basically.
I think there's one element that pressures are more stable over time than sacks.
Yes,
predictive. But then it's also that pressures in their own right add value to your defense because you're forcing bad decisions. You're forcing the quarterback to bail from the pocket. So it's more that he's going to be more of a pressure guy than I think a sack guy, just because of the closing speed and explosiveness to really finish a lot of those wins.
So you and JJ Watt are in lockstep on PFF being bad and not representative of players' actual ability.
Yeah, that would be accurate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with everything JJ Watt says.
Okay.
Because he was good at football.
That's the only qualification that matters when it comes to evaluating football.
But speaking of Tavondre Sweat, though, he had a hell of a day.
He did have a very good day.
I thought his first practice, I would have said he was one of the losers from the first practice, just like really slow off the ball, didn't seem to have any kind of pass rushing plan. And he had the one dominant rep against Bo Limmer for Arkansas, where he just folded him into the ground.
Cheap suit. Tough.
But then had a couple other nice wins there. And then he's someone, he has, in terms of where he's going to go, he has a certain floor, because he's going to be just a block eater as a run defending nose tackle. It's just the debate that I kind of have in my head is just what's his ceiling as a pass rusher. Because a lot of times we see these guys who are projected as like they could be a nose tackle that actually pressures the quarterback.
Right.
And at a certain size, which we don't actually know what that is for Tavondre Sweat, because he declined to do the weigh-in.
Oh, I'm sitting here looking for it. That's why I can't find it. Okay, so we don't know. I mean, he's very large. We just don't know exactly how big he is.
Yeah, he's pretty much unmovable in the middle of the defense. But yeah, I think, I'm thinking probably late second would be where he goes.
Okay.
I definitely have him in the top 40 though. Like I'm a big Tavondre Sweat guy.
Is he D-line 2 behind his teammate?
He would be D-line 3 for me, behind his teammate Byron Murphy,
right,
and then Johnny Newton for Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have Tavondre Sweat as my 30th overall player.
Okay, so a borderline first rounder. A couple of edges I want to get your thoughts on, and you said you really want to talk about Darius Robinson out of Missouri, an edge player. What have you seen from him today? He's not somebody that caught my eye, but clearly I wasn't paying attention because it sounds like he had a good day.
Yeah, I would say if he didn't catch
was he on the national or American team?
I mean, I'm not
national or American team. Do you know?
The second team.
Okay, I watched receivers and quarterbacks in the second team, so that'd be why.
That's why. All right, he won every single rep.
Okay.
This dude, I think he's going in the first round. Darius Robinson, edge rusher out of Missouri, has really long arms. I think close to 35 inches, and they're built like tree trunks. He's one of these. If you can look up his measurements while I'm speaking, just a massive human, really refined pass rushing skill set. He had, I think, 3 one-on-one reps today, and he won all 3 of them decisively. He had a club swim against Tyler Guyton. He had an inside club against Javon Foster, his teammate at Missouri. And then another swim move through the B gap against Bo Limmer. Just really fluid with that arm over. I know I saw Daniel Jeremiah release his top 50 yesterday, and he had him 30th, which like Darius Robinson's been kind of a consensus 4th rounder.
Whoa.
And I had him as like a late second, and I thought I was way too high on him. And then now I think I may become way too low on him. It's funny. That's the best part about draft season, is that you can go, every single conversation is relative. So you can go from banging the table for someone and like hyping them up. Mm-hmm. And then if it flips to the other side, then it's like every time you talk about them, you have to defend why you're lower. Right. That's the same way with Terry and Arnold, where like people weren't talking about him early in the year because he was a breakout this season, opposite of Kool-Aid McKinstry. So every time I talked about Terry and Arnold early on, I would be like trying to explain to people like why this is a first round pick. And then I start seeing him in the, like DJ had him 5th overall, which is kind of wild to me.
Terry and Arnold? Yeah.
So then now it's like I have to, every time I talk about Terry and Arnold, I have to talk about why I'm not as high on him. So anyways, that's probably what's going to happen with Darius Robinson, but he was, I think, definitely through these first 2 practices, he's been the best defensive lineman for sure. it would be between him and Quinyon Mitchell for best defensive player overall. And wouldn't surprise me if he goes in the first round because he's got the traits. He's got a well-refined skill set. And yeah.
That's, I mean, high praise for a guy who's currently on consensus 99th overall on a big board.
That's not going to last.
That'd be one hell of a rise for this season. So I'm interested to see that. He's definitely a guy that I'll watch more of tomorrow. 6'5", 296, and you said with that arm length, I mean, the traits are there, right? Like the keys are there, and he's putting on one hell of a show today. So that definitely is a guy. I think it was closer to that.
Look at his percentiles.
Yeah.
Where he's in the 80th percentile or above in every single size metric for an edge rusher.
For
measured in at 6'5", 286, 34 3/4 inch arms, which is 89th percentile, 10.5 inch hands, 88th percentile. Bigger, faster, stronger is what the NFL defaults to. And if you've got that and you have a pass rushing bag, you're not getting out of the top 50, like for sure.
Yeah. And for the viewers who cannot see that, we're looking at his percentiles. The bars, they're pretty full. They are very full bars there. So
a lot of blue and green.
A lot of blue and green. So that is another guy. Who do you want to move to next, Easton? Let's go. Yeah, let's go to the guy who I think on the outside edge is one of the guys who may be the first defensive player off the board. Laiatu Latu, which is a Hall of Fame name right there. He was a guy that I think stood out in the early session today. Especially, he was a guy that I think outside of maybe, like you said, Robinson, he was a guy out there who I think really had a strong second day, which I think we were definitely expecting. I mean, he was just out there bullying some guys today.
Yeah, yesterday he was trying to just win with speed around the edge. Had a lot of one-on-ones against Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State, and he was just mirroring him to the high side pretty easily. But he started to do a lot more of trying to win with his hands today, which is that's his game. He's a solid athlete in terms of movement skills, but doesn't have this crazy explosiveness off the snap or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He had his sequencing of moves is just masterful. Like he would his go-to move is a cross chop where like you're going across, you're chopping across your body.
Mm-hmm.
And he set it up. I think it was on Satoa.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know how to say it.
I still haven't learned how
I don't know how to say
it. Haven't watched him yet, but he was impressive today, by the way. But had a great little sequence there where he did like cross chop and then cross chop into a swim move and then did like an outside spin. He just kind of it was like the Utah guard was doing everything right from a technique standpoint. He just got beat by a better pass rushing plan. So I was kind of worried about Latu after the first practice. I thought had some pretty rough reps, but definitely had a bounce back performance today.
And he's somebody that's going to, from a NFL evaluation standpoint, the narrative on him is going to be the medicals, right? Am I understanding correctly that he was medically retired from the game at one point because of a back and nerve issue, and then came back when he got cleared by a different doctor?
Neck, but yeah.
Okay, something spinal, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big issue. He wasn't sure if he's ever going to play again. Then he comes back, puts together a really nice season. And do you have any further insight into that, or is that still something that we don't know a whole lot about?
Yeah, the medical thing, I think no one's really going to know anything more about that until the combine. And
right.
You have to like wait to it's so weird. I've heard NFL people talk about the combine with medical, and they're like, yeah, I just got to get my hands on them.
Right.
So
gotta poke and prod the guy.
Their hands on him.
Right. Naturally.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing with Latu is he has pretty short arms for an edge rusher, and you do see that show up on tape when you're doing these cross chops and like cross face moves like he does, where you're exposing your chest. If you've got an offensive tackle with quick hands and long arms, and they can get into your frame, they can kind of shut down reps early, and he's not great at disengaging and freeing himself. And I felt like when I watched his tape, he faced a lot of not great competition. And then when he, just in terms of, the tackles that he was going up against, when he did go up against NFL caliber tackles like Jordan Morgan, Talise Fuaga,
Jordan Morgan, the tackle, you say?
Well, played tackle in college. Yeah. And then Jonah Monheim, the tackle for USC, who's not in this class, he was kind of shut out. I think he might have had one win to the inside against Fuaga, but he, I think, did kind of clean up against some bad competition. So I have some concerns about Latu. Luckily the Titans aren't going to be in the market for an edge rusher, but like it's a really tough top three for me to split. It's going to be a game time decision for me between Dallas Turner, Latu, and Jared Verse. I have it Verse, Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, and then Latu as my third right now, just considering the medical thing, but it's pretty close between those three.
And as we do this draft talk, we will continue here, but there is some breaking news that Jordan Schultz is reporting, so we can talk about that for the Titans. Breaking: the Titans are closing in on a deal to hire Ravens DBs coach Denard Wilson as their new DC, sources tell Bleacher Report. Jordan Schultz ends up as somebody is getting their car stolen or something. That's lovely. Wilson has quickly risen up the coaching ladder after helping mold Baltimore's secondary into one of the best units in football. My thoughts on this: he had the number one secondary last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had the number one secondary this year for the Baltimore Ravens. I think it makes definitely a lot of sense for Brian Callahan, as he said in his opening press conference. He loves to learn from what beats him. And as we talked about, the Bengals were one of the teams that just continued to have trouble with the Ravens secondary. So bringing him in, it's gonna, next season, I think, is a hard sell to see him try to three-peat for best secondary in the league. If he does it with this group, that's going to be very interesting. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are, first of all, I saw some folks on the internet today talking about how it seemed like the Titans were having a hard time hiring guys. So that's unfortunate timing for those folks. Yeah, I'm honestly surprised the Ravens didn't hire him because their DC opportunity now, something they've got to fill that job with Mike McDonald going to Seattle. I think that he's Zach saying he heard it was a struggle in all caps. That's what I heard as well. That apparently they were really struggling to find guys. Listen, Callahan said explicitly at his press conference that he was in no rush. He was taking his time. He took his time. It's been a week. He made the first hire. I think it's a very good hire. It sounds like, based on what some players have said about him as a coach who have played under him, he's a guy that is similar to Callahan in the sense that his players are really big fans of the guy as a teacher and a communicator, which is something that I think is going to be a common theme as you see these guys start to trickle in to the coaching staff. And I think you make the best point of all, JT, circling back to what Callahan said about wanting to form his new team's defensive identity around the things that make his life as an offensive coordinator difficult. I think this defensive coordinator hire is the perfect example of that, and it wouldn't shock me if we see a trend in that regard going forward. James, do you have any opinion on this guy? Do you even know who this guy is? Is this your area of expertise at all?
Yeah. So I haven't done a ton of research into like him specifically, right. And by that I mean I haven't done any.
Sure. Right. Denard Wilson, blank sheet on your computer.
I do know that the Ravens, really their whole defense was kind of playing above the sum of their parts. Like they were getting high level play from guys like Arthur Millette, and a lot of mid-round defensive backs that were stepping up. That was happening all over the defense. Right. So, you never know exactly who to credit for that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a solid hire. I think if he can come in and install the Mike McDaniel scheme, I mean, that's a win. I didn't have a major issue with keeping Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator. I honestly thought
can't wait for that Paul Karski tweet first thing in the morning. Shane Bowen no longer with the team. That only Paul knows for some reason. That's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was a very good like game planner for a big game or something. Yeah, it seems like there would be 3 or 4 games a year where it's like, man, they were really like throwing their fastballs like this game, but just the overall execution, especially in the secondary. it gets back to the impossible to answer question of like, who do you blame, the players or the coach? Which I've had enough of for this offseason. But, guys like Christian Fulton continuing to make, like, even outside of him just getting beat one-on-one, which isn't on the DC, him just like cover 3, letting the one receiver on his side run wide open down the seam. Elijah Molden, a 3rd or 4th year player, can't execute like basic quarters coverage stuff. Just that kind of stuff. I think you could definitely blame on Shane Bowen.
Right.
I know a lot of fans have issues with the off coverage, but I hate to tell you, like,
when you have bad players,
all of Christian. Yeah. Well, that's for one thing. Like when you got bad corners in there, you don't want them playing press. Like I would much rather I would much rather them try to march 10 yards at a time down the field than just give up 80-yard touchdowns.
Right.
But like even someone like Christian Fulton, who a lot of people really want to play more press. If you go back and watch all of his best plays from when he was actually good, it's him crashing on underneath routes from off coverage. Like that's his skill set.
When he was actually good is just a brutal indictment. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the off coverage debate. There will be some people that will just never agree on that, but I actually kind of like off coverage. It's all about executing it though.
Okay. Let's get back. We got 4 more prospects that I want to turn through here. Some offensive linemen where we've kind of buried the lead. One could very easily argue the biggest need for this Titans team is in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball. And there are 4 guys that have stood out in some capacity to JT or I that we scribbled down that we wanted to get your thoughts on. The first is a name that a lot of people are going to recognize, AtoZ Fuaga. Is am I saying that right? Does that sound right to you? Do you have any idea?
I know
Taliesin?
I know it's not that.
Okay, so what do you think it is?
I think it's either.
It is Fuaga,
I think it's
right?
Either Talisi or Talise. I think it is Fuaga.
Okay, so Fuaga, Talise T. Fuaga. He is a tackle from OSU, Oregon State. That is. What have you seen from him this week, and what do you think about him on tape?
Yeah, he looked really good at. So I'll start with what I saw from him on tape. Mauling run blocker. Just a huge player. I think he's in the 320s or 330s. Really not a whole lot of bones to pick with his run blocking. I think he's comfortably the best run blocking offensive lineman in this class. I had him as a guard heading into the week. And the main issue is like, I felt like on tape when he really got threatened with edge speed, he would give a short corner pretty often. And he had this bad habit of punching with his outside hand and just like leaving it out there. Normally you've got to, like, if you're going to throw the outside hand, you've got to bait punch. We were throwing it and then you're pulling it back. You're drawing out the pass rushing move, pulling it back, protecting the outside. He would just kind of throw his outside hand, let the pass rusher swipe it, and then he doesn't have this elite recovery speed to, protect the corner. So yeah, a lot of his issues dealing with speed rushers was why I thought he might be a better fit at guard, but it was also a technical issue that he could just kind of fix. And I think he has, based on the reps that all the reps that I've seen from him at the Senior Bowl. There aren't any losses that come to mind for me with Talise Fuaga and Pass Pro.
Okay.
So yeah, he probably won't get a grade bump or anything for me, because I had a high grade on him. He's a top 15 player for me, but he's definitely getting moved back to tackle, and guard is more of a worst case scenario destination. See, and now you say Talise Fuaga, and the fact that I said Taliesin is, I think it goes down as the funniest mispronunciation, because you're right, it's definitely not that. My funniest mispronunciation. That's you put that in my brain. You did, but I ran with it. I should have thought better. Okay. Kenneth in the comments, breaking Titans news: Titans hiring DC Denard Wilson. Yes, in fact, they are. And if you want our thoughts, scroll back about 5 minutes in the feed. You're going to find it. Okay, next guy. A guy that is, I think, a pretty, I don't know, maybe this is a step too far. I think he's a bona fide first-round pick. I think he's one of the most solid talents I've seen out here in the trenches. Jackson Powers Johnson, interior offensive lineman. From Oregon? Yes. Yep. Okay. From Oregon.
He's somebody that you came in here before the show, mentioned him, said you were working on a video for him before you came here. So he's fresh on your mind. What do you like about JPJ?
Yeah, JPJ, I identified pretty early in the process as my favorite center. Not like I discovered him, just he stood out to me.
Right.
So
this is a great guy, under the radar. You're gonna love him.
Yeah. This under the radar guy, Joe Alt, that I
right.
found. So he weighed in at the Senior Bowl at 334 pounds, which would be the heaviest weight for a center.
Wait, you said 334?
Yeah.
Wow.
In like combine pro day history. Not body shaming, but
it's all muscle. I mean,
yeah. He's a big boy,
big fella.
The fact that he can pull off some of the run blocks, like out in open space that he does at 334, and he was listed, I think, in the 320s at Oregon. So, you never know, give or take 10 to 15 pounds with these guys going from different place, especially during the pre-draft process. But yeah, just a huge stopgap in the middle of your offensive line, and he can get out in space and demolish linebackers on screens, sweeps, toss plays. He's looking to kill. Only allowed one pressure in all of 2023. I think he had just recorded the video. So 497 pass blocking snaps, only allowed one pressure. Led college football centers in literally every stat except for like penalty rate. He's in like the 50s or something.
Sure.
But, first in all the PFF grades, blown block percentage, pressure rate, hasn't allowed a sack in his entire college career. He's 21 years old. Really just an extremely clean prospect across the board, except for the fact that at his size, he's not going to have like Tyler Linderbaum zone blocking ability.
Sure.
He can't, pull off these insane reach blocks like he can. There's certain
athletic limitations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would call him an above average athlete for a center.
But at the size, physics, right.
He's an elite athlete. Really my one hang up with Jackson Powers Johnson is that, yes, he only allowed one pressure in college, but he didn't really have a lot of difficult assignments. So the Pac-12 defensive tackles that he faced were pretty weak, and they also didn't give him a lot of one-on-one opportunities. He had a lot of reps on tape that are going down. They're like getting charted as a pass blocking snap without a pressure allowed, but it's because he didn't have anyone blocking him because they were just attacking the guards because, you're picking your battles as a game planner. So I still, even though the metrics were great and it's hard to really find any losses on his tape, I still wanted to see more like decisive wins one-on-one against good competition. And he hasn't lost a single rep in 2 days. There have been late wins, there have been some times where he might open up a lane and then recover, but dude, he's been rock solid. And the most impressive thing about it, I knew he could anchor. I knew he had a firm initial punch and all of that. What's been most impressive is his ability to recover laterally. There have been multiple reps where he gives the rushing lane early. They might get him with a quick crossface move. Mm-hmm. And you can hear the other defensive linemen making noises like, ooh. And then he sticks, he's playing with independent hands. So he sticks back the inside hand, recovers, slides over, puts him into the ground, and then it gets quiet. Right. And he's winning he's got wins in every single situation that you can imagine. Michael Hall Jr. for Ohio State is a really quick, one of the quickest defensive tackles in this class. He was mirroring his spin move, had some great anchor reps, plays with independent hands. He showed that he can do it all in pass pro, did it at center and at guard, which, I wasn't even on my mind, a potential position switch, but looking back at it, he did play right guard to finish the season last year in 2022. Mm-hmm. So he's got experience there, looked great at both positions. I think, I already had a first round grade on him. So I'm not raising his grade at all. But
Sure.
yeah, man.
Is he the biggest, like, you can go home candidate that's here right now? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else for him to prove. He could pack it up today and he'd be A-okay.
Yeah, his one negative is just snapping the ball.
Right.
You saw that later in the season. USC, Arizona State, and Oregon State, he had some bad snaps, and then there was a bad snap that I saw in the 7-on-7s. So might want to move him to guard just to avoid that. But he's also new to center, so give him some cushion there.
A listener request from our buddy Stoney. He asked if you have any opinions on Ethan Driscoll. Is he somebody that?
Yeah, he needs to learn how to play basketball.
Okay. All right. Well,
but honestly, like I think he's too tall to play tackle.
Was he like 6'8"? What is he?
Yeah, 6'8".
Oh, actually, okay.
He just gets like long armed to death.
Okay, fair enough. Last guy that we have to mention here, and then we will finally get out of here. Somebody that you came in here and said, I want to talk about this guy, Christian Haynes, Connecticut. Is that where he's from? You said interior offensive lineman, tackle.
Yep, right guard.
Right guard. Okay. What is it about Christian Haynes that begs to be mentioned on the show today?
Yeah, I think Christian Haynes, outside of Jackson Powers Johnson, was across these two practices the second best offensive lineman.
Okay.
And I've been a huge fan of his tape since last year. He was a guy, every year there's a few people that I watch leading up to the declaration date, and then they end up coming back to school. So I watched him and liked him last year. Thought he would declare for the draft. He ends up coming back to UConn. I think UConn football has this rule where they can only have one good player at a time.
Naturally, yeah.
Like,
it's an Ivy League rule. You got to have one.
Travis Jones. You're just, I mean, with Christian Haynes, you know, you're watching them and they're down like 35-3 to FIU, and he's just like pancaking dudes on outside zone. It's like, why are you still running outside zone?
Right, right.
But no, he is, I think, the best day one best zone blocking, definitely interior lineman, but maybe lineman overall. Like, I think you plug him into an outside zone scheme today, and he's a high level run blocker, just understands everything about it. Obviously, like, he has the movement skills, but understands angles, hand placement. He could pull off a reach block in his sleep. He has the perfect build for a guard, which is short, big, and with long arms. I think almost 34-inch arms, 33 and something is what he measured in at. And, you know, I think what he's shown the most improvement in from last year is just hand usage and pass pro. Pretty much, he's another player that I can't think of any losses off the top of my head from watching the tape in Senior Bowl. Does a good job playing with independent hands. He had an outstanding rep against Jordan Jefferson for LSU, where he tried to bull rush him. He dropped his anchor, bull rush went nowhere, and then Jefferson got angry and like ripped off his helmet.
Oh, that was that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And I think my guy, Damian Parson at Locked On, he was on the field. He said that Christian Haynes yelled at him, "If you're scared, go to church," or something.
It's great. That is great.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of Christian Haynes. He's one of those guys where when I like go through and update my grades, I have to like hold myself back from raising his like I'm raising his grade every time.
Just constantly wanting to move him up.
Because what I'll do is I'll do my grades, and then I'll go through and like look at 3 or 4 players, and I'll be like, okay, is this guy better than this guy? And then I'll kind of stack it that way. And with Christian Haynes, I'm comparing him to everyone else. I'm like, all right, now he's better than him. I like him better than like so.
When does it stop? When does it stop? Exactly.
At this rate, he will be my #1 overall player by draft day.
I can't wait. Well, that is all the names we have listed today, and we have taken up plenty of your time, and I think that we can call it a wrap for today. Thank you for joining us and giving us so much really valuable insight. It is genuinely one of my favorite things. It's a treat to have you on the show. You've got a ton of content coming out for the next 3 months that people need to check out on AtoZ Film Room on YouTube. But what's something in the near future that they can look forward to?
Yeah, I've got a Jackson Powers Johnson video that I just uploaded, and we'll see when the social guys end up posting that. Okay. So next couple days.
Soonish, sure.
Gonna do Quinyon Mitchell tomorrow. And then Friday, I'm going to do my risers and fallers, winners, losers from the Senior Bowl.
Okay.
And then we'll see if anyone else sticks out. And then, AtoZ Filmroom on YouTube got basically from now until draft season, I'll be doing 4 scouting reports a week, and we'll see how many I can stack up by draft day.
Well, it's great work, and it's a phenomenal resource for anybody in the Nashville area or just anybody that is interested in the draft for your draft content, as well as your big board that's live already on AtoZSports.com, where you can, I think, do all of the customization classification things. You can
got if you go to No Flags Film on Twitter,
Okay.
It's my pinned tweet.
There you go.
And it's like on websites, there's like a limit to how wide it can be, but there's a full view button that you can click, and it pulls up like the whole table that like for if you're looking at it on a computer. But it's got a consensus board. You click on the rows, you got the full scouting reports, got percentiles for all the athletic testing, player comps, recruiting information, all that good stuff.
All right. Well, hey, if you're not following us on social media, do us a favor and do that at Hot Read Pod on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow us on Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Hit subscribe. It's very helpful to us if you can do that. And thank you to James for being here. Thank you to JT, as always, for being here. Thank you to you all for tuning in with us live this evening. We're going to get some dinner or do something other than to think about football, which has been nothing but football today. So we'll be back here in Mobile tomorrow for our last show on this feed with our buddies Zach and Stoney. We'll be doing, I don't know what we're going to talk about. These players, we may do some
Ethan Driscoll
for an hour. So check out the Driscoll content. We're going to talk about whether he should or should not move on to basketball. Until then, for James and for JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Peace out.